Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're having a great week and having a great day today. I'm happy to be back on another episode, and I'm very excited about this one because we're going to go over how to run a Mastermind GT with an AXFX 3 by Fractal Audio Systems. This is my favorite device in my entire guitar effect rack. It has a lot to offer and it's amazing what you can do with it. The AXFX 3 is a digital preamp and effects processor, and inside the device holds tons and tons of amplifier and cab simulators and a very large selection of pre and post effects from your drives, compressors, delay, reverbs and modulations, and so much more. It has so much capability and I love using it every time I get to play. So thanks to Midi capability, we can use a Mastermind GT to control it. In order to get started on showing how this works, we're going to step over to my pedal board that I use for quiet, and I just ran a full factory reset on my GT22 so that way you can get a full look of how the entire process of initializing an AXFX 3 with the Mastermind GT works. So let's get started by going over how to properly connect the AXFX 3 with the Mastermind. So what we're going to do is, we're going to work with two MIDI cables in this video. We have a couple of options with connecting with the MIDI cables. The first thing you can do is you can plug from the Mastermind's MIDI out to the AXFX's MIDI in with a standard 5-pin MIDI cable. However, if you'd like to make things a little bit easier on stage, what we can do is we can head over to RGM and we can go buy ourselves a 7-pin MIDI cable and a phantom power box. What we can do is use the AXFX 3 to phantom power the Mastermind GT, so that way we don't have to have a power supply on stage next to the GT. What we do is we rack mount the phantom power box in the rear of a rack system, and we run the 7-pin MIDI cable all the way back to our rack system. Once we plug the 7-pin MIDI cable into the GT, it'll power it on. The way it works is, we'll have the 7-pin MIDI cable connecting from the GT's MIDI out, and then we're going to connect it to the phantom power box in our rack system, and from there we have two connectors. One will be the actual GT's power supply. You'll connect that to your power conditioner or wherever you're drawing power from. And then the other connector that we have waiting for us is now a standard 5-pin MIDI cable for us to move on to the rest of our MIDI chain. In my case, I'll be connecting to my MIDI Solutions T8 box. It's a splitter for the rest of the MIDI devices in my rig. Now, one other thing that I'd like to note is that I in fact have an additional MIDI cable connected to my GT22. This is going from the MIDI into the GT to the MIDI out of my AXFX 3. The reason why I connect it like that is because there are some instances where I'll be running an Ableton session to automate scene changes for AXFX, and as the DAW being the external commander, it'll initiate the scene change for me. However, unless I have another MIDI cable sending back the bidirectional data, the GT's not going to know what's going on. Or in other words, if you look at the scene buttons when we're all set up, and an instance of automation occurred by Ableton changing the scene, the button won't reflect that. In my case, I like to have the GT be in my mind on stage, so even if I'm not necessarily controlling anything manually, I always want to know what's going on based on looking at the GT. So it's something to keep in mind. It's not mandatory to run a GT and AXFX with two MIDI cables, but it can't hurt, so let's go ahead and do that. Aside from the MIDI cables, one additional thing that we can utilize now is the expression pedals inputs. In the AXFX, we have effect blocks such as wah pedals, pitch shifters, and volume pedals that we can control with external expression pedals by selecting the modifiers within their effect settings. So what you may do here is grab the expression pedal of your choice and a TRS cable, and you may connect that to one of the expression pedal inputs on the rear panel of the Mastermind GT. Once you set up your modifiers later in your effects settings, you may now use an expression pedal through the Mastermind GT's MIDI signal flow to do your shifting with these effects. Awesome stuff. Now, before we go ahead and set up the Mastermind GT, let's head over to the front panel of the Axe FX 3 and take a look at how to set up a MIDI channel. So what we do here is we hit the setup button, and then we're going to scroll down to MIDI remote, and we're going to hit enter. And then the first thing you see there is a MIDI channel with a number. I have mine set up to channel 3. You may use whatever MIDI channel works best for you. Let's go on into the setup menu of the Mastermind GT and let's see how we can initialize the Axe effects with this thing. Let's begin by holding down the 2 black buttons beneath the display screen, and here we are. So in order to add the Axe effects as a device, let's go ahead and start by hitting Edit Devices. We'll use an empty slot, hit Type, and let's find Fractal Audio, which is right here. And you may select whichever Axe Effects device that you have, but I'll be selecting Axe Effects 3. So now the GT knows what device we're going to be using. The first thing we'll do is set up our MIDI channel. I'm on 3 with mine, so that's what I'll go ahead and do. RJM sets up the Mastermind to come preloaded with different configurations of buttons for MIDI devices, and the Axe Effects is one of them. If we go ahead and hit Set Default Buttons, we'll be brought to a page that says Select Button Page. This is asking you which page of your Mastermind setup that you would like the Axe Effects buttons to be placed on, and you're going to be seeing buttons such as presets, scenes, and different loop buttons for your effect blocks. So let's go ahead and select one. Buttons are now assigned. Before we go on back to seeing how the button pages look, there is one miracle task that I love about the Mastermind. It can get all the preset names for you. That way you don't have to spend so much time entering all the information of your preset names and even your scene names yourself. So if we go ahead and hit this button, Get Preset Names, we have a few options here. We are able to control how many presets that we would like the Mastermind to read from our device. Now for timing's sake of this video, I'm going to lower this number down by a lot. So from 511, let's go down to 20 presets. Alright, hit done. We also have the option of getting the names of our scenes, so let's put that in the on position. And there is one additional option that pops up here. We have the ability to create songs with the GT based on the presets. I'm going to leave this off because that's actually something I like to do manually. But the choice is yours. Go ahead and do that if you'd like. So let's hit the start button and have the GT do its job. It's going to ask you if it's okay to proceed just in case. Let's hit yes. Operation Get Preset Names is now complete. Let's exit out of the setup menu and see how the page looks. Okay, very cool. This is actually a view I have not seen in a while. Alright, so we have a lot of cool stuff going on here. The first thing that gets my attention is the tap tempo button that's blinking. This is corresponding with the tempo or BPM that's happening in the preset right now. If we were to tap it a little bit, we'll have changed the tempo in this preset. Another great thing is that we have a tuner button. When we select it, it's going to turn the display screen of the GT into a tuner. So if we tune a guitar, it'll work perfectly. And not only does the display screen on the GT change, naturally the one on the Axe Effects does as well. It'll go into tuner mode with it. So looking at the rest of the buttons on this page, we see that we have a lot of blue buttons that are named after some effects. Exactly what you're seeing here are the different effect blocks within an Axe Effects preset. These are instant access buttons that allow us to turn effect blocks on and off within a preset. So in this case, we have our amp sim, drive, delay, and the chorus. However, you're going to see that there's a lot of buttons that don't have color at the moment. That's because these particular effect blocks do not exist in the preset we're currently running right now. If we were to go ahead and scroll to another preset, for example, let's have Fever Dream by Quiet. Okay, there you go. We just had a compressor pedal turn on because there's a compressor effect block being used in this preset. The bottom row of buttons on our page are the preset buttons for any Axe Effects preset. The Mastermind GT is sending program changes to make this happen. And then of course we have our bank up and down buttons to get to different groupings of presets to another. Now just to note here, this is an out-of-box formation of buttons. You can go ahead and change anything around that you'd like to. I know that many of you, like myself, will want to have access to the scene buttons, and some personal preferences of mine, I don't actually like to have the presets on the bottom row. I'll go ahead and put them in the first full row on the GT, and then I'll have my Axe Effects scenes located in bottom row instead, because that's what I'm going to be mostly changing around when I'm performing live. You may also notice that my GT looks a little different than yours. I have a piece of yellow electrical tape before the bottom row. That's a visual cue from when I'm performing live to help my eyes see a little more clearly of which buttons I'm pressing, specifically the scene buttons, so that way I don't trip anything else by mistake. Okay, so we are back here with the Mastermind GT editor with my primary settings file re-uploaded into the GT22. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. These are the general settings for the GT that we're working with. One thing I want to point out is that we can have multiple pages of buttons to work with. In many cases, we could definitely have more than one. The amount of pages that I like to have is 3. So that's what I'll select, but you can choose as many as you'd like. If we head over to Midi settings, you're going to notice that I have bidirectional Midi checked off. If you were someone that's going to be running your GT and Axe Effects with both the Midi out and in cables, I recommend checking that off. It'll come in handy later. If we go over to the Devices tab, we'll now see that we have Axe Effects as my first device in the order, and like always, the settings that you see here 100% correspond with everything that we worked with on the main board of the GT. We have our Midi channel set to 3. The Midi port that we're using is the Midi out. Let's go over to the Buttons tab. This is what my first page of buttons looks like. So I like to use the top row for my more systematic stuff, bank up and down, and then I have my set list and song menus respectively. The first full row that I have here are my presets, and then the third row are the Axe Effects scenes. This row of buttons right here actually has nothing to do with Axe Effects. These are instant access buttons that work with several other Midi devices like a whammy pedal, a chaos pad, and a pedal looper. If we go on over to page 2, I don't have any other Axe Effects buttons here aside from the tuner, which I almost never use. I honestly don't even know why I have it here. And the reason being is because as a personal preference, I already have a tuner pedal on my board, but it's actually my guitar's wireless transmitter. I have the Shure GLXD pedal version, and it has a tuner with it, so I don't necessarily use Axe Effects' tuner here. Let's go on over to the final page of my layout. I don't have much going on here for Axe Effects either, but what I do have are some additional instant access buttons for any effect blocks that are in certain presets, as well as the tap tempo button, and the final row has some scenes. Now, this setup that I have is for something specific. I don't perform any shows with this settings file. I use this only for here at home. The way I set up this page specifically is for when I might be playing a song that I don't have a preset for, but I have what I like to call global amp presets. The first dozen presets in my Axe Effects are my favorite amp presets. And each preset will actually include multiple amp presets, so that way if I'm playing a song that I've never necessarily made a preset before, I can use multiple amps within a preset to define certain sections. I also have reverb, delay, and chorus in each of those presets so that I have the option of messing around with those sounds. And if I'm playing along to a song, I could just hit the tap tempo button so that these effects will align with the tempo of the song. Well, this was a fun episode to shoot. I'm always happy to talk Mastermind and Axe effects together. So I hope that you learned something in this video, especially when it comes to setting up a Mastermind GT with any other potential guitar or bass effects processor that you'll be working with. With Midi, many things are possible. I know that's like the cheesiest thing that I've probably said in any of these videos. But nah, it's true. So if you got anything out of this video, please go ahead and hit the like button. And if there are any other MIDI devices out there that you'd like to see me go over in a future video when it comes to working with a Mastermind, please go ahead and leave it in the comments. I'll be happy to do that for you. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to keep up to date with future videos. Have a good week, everyone. Be good.